I had tried every conventional thing imaginable, and 10 years later, the company was still about a $500 million company. We were like a very low growth, and we were banging our head against a company, Microsoft, which is more you could more easily leave the United States than you could leave the domain of Microsoft. They're just everywhere.
Hey guys, welcome to Everyday Finance. Bitcoin is still in the beginning stages of what has the potential to become its most significant price surge ever. Those who arrive at the market early may see gains that the majority of latecomers will only dream about. According to Michael Saylor, the executive chairman of MicroStrategy, who has just delivered one of his most powerful forecasts to date regarding Bitcoin 2025, this is the adventurous prediction that he has made. Since the beginning of Bitcoin's existence, he believes that this current cycle has the potential to become the most explosive growth phase in the cryptocurrency's history. According to Saylor, there has been an unprecedented increase in demand, with thousands of corporations in the United States participating and the interest of institutions accelerating at a rapid pace. Even sovereign wealth funds, major corporations, and governments are beginning to see Bitcoin not as a risky bet, but rather as a strategic reserve asset. This shift in perspective is a relatively recent development. According to him, this shift is going to cause enormous changes to balance sheets all over the world and will set off a level of adoption that we have never seen before. Stay with us because Saylor is about to explain what the future holds for Bitcoin and why getting in early could lead to life-changing opportunities.
I discovered Bitcoin 30 years into my career. So I started a company late 1989. For 30 years, I had been running an enterprise software company, MicroStrategy. We brought it public on the NASDAQ in 1998. Initially, we were focused upon one line of business, which is to sell software that allows banks or large retailers or insurance companies to analyze all of the data in their databases and assess risk and come up with marketing campaigns. Or if you wanted to figure out what sells with what and do market basket analysis or any kind of risk assessment and you're a large enterprise, you would want to build a proprietary analytical system. We call that business intelligence. So that was successful. Then I was in my expansionary era in my 30s and in my 40s, and I wanted to create lots of things. And so I launched 10 other businesses. I bought up all the domain names like angel.com and alarm.com and strategy.com and hope.com. And I launched businesses, and some of them were singles, some were doubles. I bought voice.com. I sold it for $30 million. I sold the Angel business for about $100 million. The alarm.com business, we spun off. It's a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company today. And then I launched, I don't know, a dozen other things. They just whiffed. They failed. I would say that the thing I started with turned out to be the biggest success between 1990 and 2020. And then the next idea was a small, was a double, and the next one was a single, and the rest sputtered out. I spent a lot of time. They were my favorite idea, a great idea. I loved them. I invested a lot of money in them. It turned out the world didn't think the same way I did. I either overcomplicated it. And so it's an important part of the story because by 2010, we had overexpanded as a company, and we'd launched, I wanted to be the conglomerate, 10, like the 10 different things. And I found that the one thing worked and the other 9 things didn't work. And I needed to focus. So we refocused on the core business. And for the next decade, I had 2 dual experiences. I had the experience professionally, and I had an experience personally in finance. Here's the professional experience. I worked 2,500, 3,000 hours a year with 2,000 people doing 100,000 things right. I tried everything under the sun. We had a $500 million enterprise software business, and we found that we were the winner. 99 out of 100 of our competitors, or 99 other competitors had gone bankrupt or left the industry. We were the winner, and we were competing against Microsoft. and Microsoft is Microsoft. And so we were the pure play, call it the David against the Goliaths. And so for the next decade, I spent huge amounts of money on development. It didn't work. I spent huge amounts of money on marketing. It didn't work. I rebuilt every information system in the company. It didn't work. I obsessed over systems for HR, obsessed over systems for sales, for marketing. I spent huge amounts of money on digital advertising, everything you can imagine. I would fly around the world. I flew around the world for a month, and I talked in every city, everywhere, in order to get the message out. So I had tried every conventional thing imaginable, and 10 years later, the company was still about a $500 million company. We were like a very low growth, and we were banging our head against a company, Microsoft, which is you could more easily leave the United States than you could leave the domain of Microsoft. They're just everywhere.
The warning is being issued by Michael Saylor regarding what he considers to be the most significant financial transformation in the history of modern times. The setup is clear, according to Saylor, as major institutions such as BlackRock and others quietly accumulate cryptocurrency behind the scenes. Saylor predicts that by the end of 2025, the cryptocurrency market will experience a massive breakout, with more than 1.1 billion active wallets fueling an adoption wave that is faster than anything we have ever seen. He contends that this will not merely be another bull run. Rather, it will be the most rapid and decisive generation of wealth that the entire world has ever seen take place. Through his years of research, he has arrived at a fundamental belief. Liquidity is the driving force behind markets, and in the upcoming cycle, the liquidity of cryptocurrencies will dominate everything else. As a result of the shift toward digital assets that is occurring in institutional capital, corporate balance sheets, and even government strategies, cryptocurrency is positioned to dominate every other investment class. According to Saylor, Bitcoin and the whole cryptocurrency space are no longer considered to be speculative plays. Rather, they are seen as strategic reserves and fundamental financial infrastructure. He believes that those who position themselves now, before the mainstream catches on, will be the ones to reap historic gains as this next cycle unfolds. This is because adoption is exploding, infrastructure is maturing, and capital is flowing in from all directions.
So, my professional experience is, I figured I'm not a stupid guy. I worked very hard. I had brilliant people working with me. We tried everything imaginable, but we could not dent, the digital monopolies of the world. And we were this, I'll call us a zombie company. It's a publicly traded company that makes money, that won't go out of business, that's uninteresting because it's not growing 20% or 30% a year. It's not Google. It's not Facebook. It's not a monster, but there are 10,000 companies like ours.
Right.
Most companies are like ours.
Sure.
So we were there, and then here's my personal experience. I got very fascinated with technology. I wrote a book called The Mobile Wave, and in The Mobile Wave
That was 2012. That book?
I published it 2012. I wrote it 2010, 2011, and the theme of the book is, what happens when software dematerializes, when the software runs on a phone, when the computer goes from under your desk to in your hand, when it's no longer solid state or liquid state, but it's vapor state, and you go to sleep with the phone next to you? What kind of software would happen in the mobile world? And of course, we know all about it, right? The Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Ubers, all of these things became possible during the mobile era. They were inconceivable when the software ran on a computer. So the theme of the book is, software is going to leap from under our desk to our clothing. We'll wear it, we'll hold it, and it's going to become ubiquitous 24/7, 365, and it's going to change. We're going to dematerialize 27,000 devices. 20,000 device companies died so Apple could live. We're going to crush 20,000 retailers because everybody's going to want the Amazon. You're going to see 20,000 newspapers crushed because Google and Facebook eats them. And, the message of the book is, you probably ought to just buy the Amazon stock or buy the Apple stock. And as an investor, I took, a decent amount of money, call it $25 million that I'd made over the previous 20 years as a CEO and as the founder of a company. I invested in these stocks and I 20x'd it. If how do you make money in the tech world? You invest in something everybody needs, nobody can stop, and very few people understand. Like most people will, in the year 2010, if you had said, hey, I really think that Amazon's going to work, people would have said, you're crazy. Amazon's losing money. No one's going to do this, and they would have thought you're nuts. And if you had said, I remember with Apple, you say, well, Apple, I think this iPhone's a cool thing. They would say, well, no, eventually it'll go to the price of $25 a phone like Nokia. It's going to be commoditized. They can't hold, their margins are too high. They're going to actually have their margins collapse like Dell or like Nokia. And of course, the conventional wisdom was Apple's not a good investment. Amazon's not a good investment. Facebook, what is this goofy thing? And of course, for the next decade, here's what happened. I work an hour a month as an investor and I get rich. Make $500 million. Not working, embarrassing. All you got to do is just buy the Magnificent Seven in 2010. And the conventional wisdom of Wall Street is if the stock doubles, you should diversify. You should sell half of it. If Apple doubles in price, go buy some IBM and some HP and some other computer company. If it doubles again, you sell some more of the portfolio and you buy the thing. And their thought was you got to stay diversified. But the problem is Apple won, everybody else lost. At one point, Apple made all the money in the mobile phone business. Everybody else collectively lost money to compete with them. Amazon won.
Samsung as well? All of them?
Yeah, if you look at the winners in this era, right? I mean, Apple was a winner. Amazon was a winner. Google, Facebook were a winner. Samsung is the winner in the Far East. Walmart kept up. Every other retailer, it's like there's two or three that kind of keep up. Maybe a Walmart, maybe a Target, but there's 20,000 that went out of business.
The flaws of traditional finance are being called out by Michael Saylor, who is also warning that the numbers that we are told to trust, such as inflation rates and employment data, are frequently manipulated to fit political agendas rather than reflecting reality. According to him, the picture of the economy that we are presented with is not accurate, but rather carefully crafted. The fact that Bitcoin operates outside of the system and is not susceptible to government control, policy spin, or manipulation is the reason why he considers it to be so significant. In contrast to fiat currencies, Bitcoin is not only unchangeable, but also transparent and unchangeable. According to Saylor, however, the next wave of adoption will not be driven by ordinary investors. Rather, giant corporations such as Apple, Amazon, and Google will be the ones to drive it. Because of their extensive connections to Wall Street and their access to institutional tools such as spot Bitcoin, exchange-traded funds, they will be able to amass enormous amounts of Bitcoin in a stealthy manner, which is significantly more effective than what retail investors could ever hope to achieve. However, this subsequent phase of accumulation is already beginning, but it is taking place in the background, on a large scale, and without any public announcements. Saylor asserts that we are currently experiencing a significant shift in the global financial system, and that Bitcoin is establishing itself as the basis for this transformation. Those individuals who are able to anticipate what is going to happen and take action early will be in a position to amass enormous wealth before the rest of the world notices.